Thank you. This is very intimidating, but as people have mentioned before, this is a very safe crowd, so thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. So, as you might surmise from the title, Matt GitOps doing all the things while getting nothing accomplished. There's hopefully a funny bent to this. I'm going to be dealing with some topics such as ADHD and how some of us maybe have difficulty thinking about these subjects, and some techniques that I learned techniques and tools that I learned to help me start my journey. Real quick, who am I? It's not working. There we go. My name is Justin Morgan Pitts. I am a senior systems administrator with adhd Norge AS. We are the tech company with people at heart. I've been doing this for around 25 years. I started out doing hardware back when I was a college student. My previous roles were in K through 8 and higher education, as well as in finance. I'm a serial university dropout, avid bike rider, mediocre bike racer, and friend of all cats. And I was formally diagnosed with ADHD this year at the age of 25. 53, just kidding. Some quick notes. Like I said, I will be discussing my ADHD. While I'll be sharing a lot of details about myself, I don't really consider this to be unique, and I do this in the hopes that by me sharing this, some of you can find some benefit. I am not a medical professional, so this should not be considered medical advice. If you feel like you're dealing with something, there are professionals that can help. Any opinions expressed here are my own and do not necessarily reflect the views of my employer. And because I do have ADHD, I am often impulsive, and there may be swears, but I think Duncan took care of that for me, so. My brief story, some uncomfortable details. I originally attended university for graphic design, where I was a student IT employee. Dropped out and re-entered twice. For some reason, they hired me full-time as an IT professional. Switched jobs, re-entered university later to study sustainability, then while working full-time. Dropped out again, and then picked up some buzzwords along the way, such as design thinking and systems thinking, which we can talk about later. So why this talk? Many of us started out working support desk, and when you work support desk for a while, I don't want to say it's easy, but you get a ticket, you fix it. You get another ticket, you fix it. So it's very structured, and if you have ADHD, it really suits you well. A while back on the MacAdmin Slack, on one of the CD underbelly channels, there was a discussion about this, like, how do we get into GitOps? I don't even know where to begin. So yeah, it's a big topic. There's a lot of things to think about, especially when you're thinking about how all of these things work together. Yeah, so how do you get started when you can't remember what your boss said 20 minutes ago? I feel like at one time or another, we all feel like this person. About ADHD, it's kind of a lens. It doesn't mean broken, it just means a different OS. We are kind of like a Linux box in a Windows environment, sometimes misunderstood, possibly chaotic, but occasionally powerful. What that looks like in practice, there's a bunch of different things. There are 4 kind of main things about ADHD, their traits. We deal with what's called executive dysfunction. So that means we have problems prioritizing, planning, breaking down large projects into smaller, easily accomplishable steps. And I should caveat this by saying not everybody experiences, and then people who don't have ADHD may also experience this. So just a quick caveat there. So, yep, planning and organization, tasks, sustaining attention. So if you have a bunch of tasks, you're going to want to do the more interesting ones first, and then the ones that aren't as interesting, they're not going to get done. And then working memory, somebody will talk to you and say, hey, can you do this thing? And yeah, sure, but 20 minutes or 20 seconds later, you don't remember it. Then there's time blindness. This is an interesting one. For us, for many people, everything is either now or not now. So That's why working support is really good for us, because it's an immediate problem that requires our immediate attention, and we can focus on that. But when we think about long-term projects, things kind of fall apart. This creates problems with scheduling, organizing tasks, all of that. Losing track of deadlines and difficulty transitioning between these tasks, mode switching, excuse me. Then there's hyperfocus. This can be a really useful thing, but if something is very interesting to us, we're all in. That's all we think about. Triggered by interest or stimulation. Again, a new ticket comes in, we're hyper-focused. It's some new APIs are released. We're going to focus on that. Deep immersion, like that's all we focus on. And this can be good, this can also be bad. You will forget to eat. You will forget to go to the bathroom. You will forget to take care of your cats, that sort of thing. And what seems like a minute was actually 8 hours. And then, again, you have difficulty switching focus. And then finally, while this isn't an officially recognized part of the ADHD diagnosis, many people who do have this have what's called rejection-sensitive dysphoria. And one of the theories is because so many people who struggle with ADHD have kind of a lifetime of built-up negative thought. Why can't I just do the thing? Why can't I do my homework? Why can't I make that meeting on time? It creates this kind of loop where you have all of the self-talk, so any perceived rejection, even if it's not real, creates this really intense sensation in your body. I think in the last year's session, there were some questions about, imposter syndrome. That's a big part of it, and we all struggle with that. Why are we even here? I'm thinking about that right now while I'm talking to you all. Like, I'm nobody, but I'm here in front of you, and we all struggle with this. So with all that in mind, I exhibit almost all of these traits, and this is what I feel like almost all the time. With all that said, it's not all bad. ADHD does maybe have some superpowers. For example, executive dysfunction can lead to really creative problem solving. You come up with ideas constantly. The problem is holding on to those ideas. Time blindness can support creativity, and not impulsiveness, but spontaneity, ready to change and do things differently. That can be a positive. The hyperfocus flow state, this is huge. For me, one of the things I like to do is get to work quite early in the morning. I'm kind of a morning person, and then I can hyperfocus for 2 or 3 hours before other people start coming in. And this can be incredibly powerful to learn new things or debug code or whatever. And then finally, RSD, it can lead to increased empathy and can sometimes fuel high achievement. This often fuels perfectionism, which is a double-edged sword because it can lead to good things, but it can also lead to things never actually being produced because you're always afraid to put it out into the world. So on that note, I've been, since my diagnosis, I've been learning some things and figuring out some tools that work for me. Number one, LLMs. I know we like to talk shit about ChatGPT and using it to write code. Don't use it to write code, and if you do, check your code. But what's really useful for me is I found that if I am working on something and I have an idea, I know I'm going to forget it, so what I'll do is I'll take the 5 minute or 20 seconds, put that idea into ChatGPT. Hey, create a little outline of this. It'll spit out an outline, and more often than not, it has some ridiculous ideas in there. But since it's down and saved, I can look at that and save that for later. And it's a starting point. You're not looking at a blank page and you haven't forgotten about it. So I think this is one of the most powerful things that I found works for myself, just getting that idea down and getting the kind of first steps outlined. Even if those first steps are wrong, they're there, and then you can go back and like look at them and change them as you need. The second one's funny. Huge paper calendars. When I look at Outlook on my laptop on this little screen, I can see a week. It's meaningless to me. I have no concept of what that really means. But at home, if I have one of these giant paper calendars, for some reason that tricks my brain and allows me to think of time in a more consistent manner. And I can I can sense the kind of distance better. So I think that's really, really useful for me. On the same note, huge pieces of paper or whiteboards. If you need to draw, say, a GitOps workflow, and you've got different systems working together, trying to do it on a laptop screen on I don't know, Visio or OmniGraffle or something like that, I can't comprehend it unless I can see everything. And when you try to do it on a screen, it's like very small. So for me, drawing it out on these really huge pieces of paper is incredibly helpful. And then finally, meditation. I started my meditation practice maybe a year and a half ago. And I know maybe there's some stereotypes about it, like this kind of woo-woo thing. For me, it just kind of allows me to like quiet things down. And it doesn't have to be like, 10 minutes. I did a quick 1 minute just breathing exercise before coming in here, and it kind of just stills things down, and it keeps some of these kind of negative thought spirals at bay. So, with all that said, making the jump to GitOps. What do we want to do? We want to automate all the things. Many of us have difficulty remembering everything, so why not automate it? And why people like me should love GitOps. And I love Brock and Victor's presentation before this because they talked about this from a more technical standpoint, and I think they did a really good job about that. But for us and more human level, this is commits and logs. This is external memory. This is stuff we no longer have to remember. We no longer have to try to hold this in our brain. Holding stuff in your brain constantly is exhausting. So as soon as we get it into a Git repo, we can always go back and reference it. We don't have to try and rely on ourselves. I mean, we're fragile. Our brains are malleable. Stuff happens. Automation reduces cognitive load. Like as soon as you can get some things happening automatically, you no longer have to worry about them. And the most you have to worry about is hitting yes on that merge request. That's brilliant. So that's for ADHD brains. Why should everybody love GitOps? Exact same reasons. Like this scales to everybody. This is incredibly useful. So where do you start? You have to start small. The problem is if you try to do too much at once, it's not going to work out. So you start small. You pick a thing. For me, my starting point was this. Maybe, I don't know if you can see that, gdmf.apple.com. Apple has a website. It's a JSON file of all of the current versions of OS with all of the supported devices. Whenever there's a new OS update, this gets updated. This is pretty cool information for us. Like, we need to know as soon as possible when this stuff is available. So what can we do with that? I wrote a Python script. All it does is checks this website and compares it to a local copy. If that local copy doesn't exist, it writes one. So then when you run it again, as soon as that website is updated, it updates that local copy. It also creates another JSON file, which is a simplified version, which only has, for macOS, the 3 current supported versions. So right now, 26, 15, and 14. And it does a similar thing for iOS and tvOS. So with that, what we can do is create, oh, by the way, I'm using Azure DevOps because my company uses it. You can do this in Git or GitLabs, using runners or whatever their version is. I'm using Azure pipelines. So I have a pipeline. This is a YAML file, and basically this runs every 12 hours. So every 12 hours, it runs this Python script. If there's an update, pulls them down, creates those two new files. And then what it does, it creates what's called an artifact. And an artifact is the output of a pipeline run. You know, in software development, it's a software package. For us, it's a little file that contains the two JSON files. And artifacts are pretty cool because they can be used to trigger other pipelines. So these are the two artifacts, the local copy of the GDMF, and then the supported OS JSON, which is a very simplified version. And then here you can see an example. You know, on the top is macOS 26, 15.7, 14.8. Below that is all the iOS versions. So the next step, so we've got that. That's a success. Like, we all want a small thing that can make us feel good when it's running and like giving us updates, and we don't have to think about that anymore. That's huge. So from that, now that that's running and you've got a win, you have some momentum built up. Like, you feel good, dopamine's flowing in your brain. Now you can build another script. A lot of us use Nudge, and if you're not using, you know, the built-in Sofa thing, you're keeping a local copy, maybe in a, you know, a vault somewhere or Git repo where your devices are checking that for the requirements. This is another Python script that will read the JSON from the previous workflow and then update your local Nudge settings. And the cool thing about that is you have a pipeline that is triggered whenever an artifact from the previous one is created. If it doesn't create an artifact, this doesn't have to run. And the same thing, because this is pushing to a Git repo, it pushes code, you see a merge request, you have human eyes on it, accept, and then that's another thing you don't have to think about. And these are all these incremental steps, right? It's small things that you can use to create a bigger whole. And it lessens the kind of overwhelming feeling of trying to automate everything. Like, we can't automate everything at once unless your vendor is doing that. You've got a product that does that for you. But if you want to start small and you want to start learning about these techniques, these are these small things that you can do, these small wins. So from there, what else can we do? Device compliance, OS system requirements. So we use Jamf, so we have a smart group that has the requirements for OS version require. And that can be code. So you can use the Jamf API to update that. Obviously, that's in progress, but that's another thing, and that's another small win. And it's these interconnecting things that work together to create a whole that can become very powerful. But because you're not trying to do everything at once, you don't get overwhelmed. So why this matters? Well, I'm going really fast. This is what happens. You get nervous, you talk too fast. I apologize. So why this matters? We're incorporating elements of design thinking and systems thinking. Design thinking talks about developing things that emphasize the human. Like, what do we need? You know, how do we think about things in an empathetic fashion? And for us, like, the user is us. So how do we design things for us with empathy? And lessening our workload is an empathetic thing to do. We also break things down into small wins that keep momentum. That's a problem for the ADHD brain and probably for every brain. Like, if you're never having success, you lose momentum. So if you're trying to do all these things at once, you're going to lose momentum. But if you break things down into these small steps and you get a success, that success fuels the next success. The interconnectedness, not one giant script, for example. This reduces the overwhelm. Systems thinking, this is a thing that's talked about a lot in sustainability studies, where a good analogy is an ecosystem. It's not just a farm field of one crop, like corn or wheat or whatever. It's multiple living things working together, creating a larger whole. And one thing, one species could die, but the greater thing continues on. Whereas if it's just one field of corn, that all dies. That's a weak ecosystem. That's a weak system. So the analogy for that for DevOps is if you have these small independent systems working together, well, maybe you're trying to make some improvements to one of those scripts and it breaks. It's not going to affect the whole thing. The other scripts will keep running. So it creates this kind of resiliency. Yeah, independent processes that work together. Things can and will break, but if you have one giant script trying to do everything and it breaks, well then you're kind of fucked. Again, these small independent automations reduce error and risk, and this is a positive for everybody. Also, everybody has different working styles, working techniques. Allowing people to work on different things that are all trying to do the thing together allows everybody to work together, and this is a positive. So, a real quick recap. Wow, I went really fast. Anyway, ADHD brains, we're just wired different. These strategies scale to everybody. Everybody needs a huge calendar and a huge piece of paper. Maybe not. And GitOps, it's just a way to manage the chaos. Any questions or comments?
Wait. I'll get a mic.
Hello? Yeah.
Yeah.
Justin, I know some of the effort it took you to do this, and I just want to say thank you. I value what you did there a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you for the talk. One question, maybe it's more than one. But after you got your diagnosis, did it help you in your work life? Could you probably mention a few things that got easier for you and maybe something that got harder when you got the letters put on you? Thank you.
Yeah, I think it absolutely helped. One of the things a lot of people who get an ADHD diagnosis express is a sense of relief, because I think a lot of people spend so long thinking that there's something wrong with them and they don't understand why. They can't put a word to it. And so even if they decide to not go on medication or not go to therapy or do all of these kind of different kinds of treatments, just understanding why they are the way they are is hugely relieving. And that helped me immeasurably. In terms of work, yeah, I started reading a lot of books about it, and it helped me realize what I needed to start doing, because what I need is a couple hours every morning of uninterrupted work time, and then after that, then I'm more able to engage, in like coffee chat, having these kind of side conversations that prior to that were always really annoying to me. Like it would make me physically angry. But if I can have my uninterrupted time that I schedule for myself, and allowing giving myself permission to do that was a really huge step. So that helped a lot. And then full disclosure, yes, I'm on medication. I don't take it all the time. I won't go too far into that, but I'm happy to talk about that afterward. And then, yes, therapy, and there are just a ton of books out there, and I'll have some recommendations after that. In terms of any downsides, I don't think so. There's some concerns about medication and all that, but I can talk about that later. But in general, I don't think there has been many negatives for me. It's just been a really powerful kind of positive, learning process.
Hey, thanks for the talk. As you mentioned, you're early morning hours where
Yeah.
you need the silence, how do you deal with procrastination?
It's still a problem. Don't ask me when I finished this slide deck. I think I submitted my proposal to Patrick, I think February maybe, and I started, I had a small outline there, and I thought, oh, I have so much time. And then I think in June, I started putting some slides together. And then about a month ago, I started putting some more work into it, and then things started happening at work, and everything got kind of pushed to the side. So I finished most of it a week ago, and the final touches were done last night. I did make some changes today, full disclosure.
Is it on? Hey, thank you very much. I can relate to a lot you just mentioned, and for me it's always hard to find the right words.
Yeah.
And you just did, and thank you very much for that. I hope this is put online later.
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna show this talk to my colleagues as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. That means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. My question will be, any recommendation for the people working with you, all the people that we are around that maybe we are, or we are not diagnosed, or we don't understand really what's adhd? How do you cope with your colleagues?
I think everybody's different, and I think one of the traits of one of the things I talked about was the rejection sensitivity dysphoria. And one of the things that will happen is when you have these things triggered, some people internalize those feelings and kind of don't really show anything, and other people will kind of maybe lash out angrily. And I think it's kind of up to your colleagues to maybe take that first step and at least just hey let you know and your other colleagues know this is something I have. But obviously I know not everybody is comfortable sharing that sort of information. So I think everybody's different, so you can never know, right? But I think just trying to be empathetic is, I think, the biggest thing. And if somebody, maybe snaps and is a little angry or whatever, if you interrupt them, it's probably nothing you're doing. It's something they're doing, and it's like they're just going through something. So I think that's the only advice I can give about that. And for me, I started talking to my colleagues. Thank you for the patience. I know that sometimes I can be kind of an asshole, but I try not to show it. But once I let them know and let them know, what I've been going through and kind of my process, then yeah, it was very helpful. And it's also a relief because now they get it. So I hope that answered some of your question. Okay. Oh.
Thank you very much. So,
real quick, some recommended speakers, books, take a screenshot, and also thank you to my cats.